Welcome, everyone. We will get started here shortly, but I'd like to give people a few more moments to get their audio preferences settled before we begin. Hello and welcome to today's webinar. Before I hand it off to our presenters, I just want to cover a few technical details, just in case you haven't joined an ACRO webinar in the past. We use Zoom webinar, which is similar to Zoom meeting, except that your cameras and your microphones are going to be off by default. So to interact with each other and with the presenters, you have two main options. For discussion and general comments, please use the chat button. This will default to your hosts and panelists, so meaning only they can see your message. If you want everybody to see your message, please select everybody from the drop-down menu. So if you want to ask questions at the end of the webinar, please make sure to select the Q&A button, and you can ask questions anonymously. You can view and you can comment on existing questions, and you can ask your questions at any time, actually. And now, without any further ado, I would like to hand this off to the panelists. Thank you.
Oh, great. Thank you so much, Belma. Really appreciate it, and so good to be here. So good to be on this webinar today with all of you folks out there in Zoom land. And we're going to be talking today about some new digital tools for student recruitment. And there's so much going on right now in the excitement over AI and ChatGPT, but so much more too that's going on that's really advancing the field. So Bill Laffey is joining me today, and we're going to introduce ourselves in just a moment, but we always start with a word of gratitude. We want to thank you for taking your time to be with us today. We know that's very valuable, and you have lots of choices about how to spend your time, and really appreciate you doing that. And also thanks to ACRO for hosting us and making it possible for us to be able to speak with you today. This is, boy, and of course you should be able to read every word on this slide. It is the fine print one, and we call it our forward-looking statement. And the gist of it is that whenever we talk about anything that we have at Salesforce, any of the solutions that we offer, we want to make sure and acknowledge that people should only buy things and make decisions on things that are actually available. And if we have any questions or discussions about the future, that type of thing, that's great. But we don't want to confuse that with the fact that you should never purchase something that isn't actually commercially available to you. So our lawyers are happy. Let's actually talk a little bit about ourselves. For those of you who don't know me, I was at ACRO for quite a while. I've been a chief enrollment officer at 7 universities in the country over a long period, and I've spent about 35 years in higher education between those positions and my position at ACRO. And I've done lots and lots of workshops and webinars and things about strategic enrollment management over the years. So maybe you've actually been with me, or maybe I've been one of your sessions at a conference in the past. But I really spent a long time in my career with technology, meaning that I had to figure it out. I was the only one who was going to figure out how to configure it, how to select it, how to implement it, and how to leverage that to really achieve strategic goals that we had as an institution that we really had to meet, that were so important for us to meet. And so that's my background, bringing my perspective in here, and now at Salesforce with the perspective of working for one of the largest technology companies in the world. And thrilled to be here with Bill Laffey. Bill, would you introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, thank you so much, Tom. I'm thrilled to be here with you. I'm Bill Laffey. My title is a lead solution engineer here at Salesforce, but I am a recruiting and admissions specialist. I started my career in admissions. I spent 14 years in admissions at 3 very different schools, where I held roles all the way from, at the beginning, a road warrior admissions counselor, all the way through to director of admissions. I have implemented over 20 solutions. A few of those 20 solutions include student information systems SISs, where I am quite honest in saying that in those SIS implementations, that might be where I lost most of my hair, versus when our fifth child was born into the world. And then the last 12 years, I've been a solution engineer, always working with education around the globe. And I'm thrilled to be here with you today. I want to echo what Tom mentioned earlier. Thank you so much for your time today.
Oh, thanks, Bill. Great. So let's get a little guidance here, a little orienteering for the session today. So what we're going to do is we're going to follow that student path, how the student comes to us from their initial very first signs of being interested in higher ed, in our institution, how we try and identify those and find those people out there in the world, all the way through to the point of enrollment at the institution. So that's our kind of timeline, if you will, that we're going to track. And we're trying to use that timeline to identify the places where admissions professionals today are really having some issues or challenging situations, and they're trying to solve these things in an increasingly technological landscape, which can be very confusing. We're always trying to match what we as an institution have to offer with just the right students and identify just the right people who are going to thrive in our educational programs. And then we also want to think of that position of our staff and how they're trying to do their jobs more efficiently, more effectively, with more technology coming at them. How does that technology really make their lives better and easier so they can focus on the human elements of this rather than the data entry elements, the sorting elements, the details of this that really just bog down their work. And so we want to take a look and examine that part of it as well, the front end and the back end of this, if you will. So to do that, we're going to use some examples today, and Bill's going to demonstrate some of the new things we have just out. We just released Education Cloud this spring. It is really exciting to see how innovative this has become and how we just continue to see the technology racing ahead, largely because we have technology that serves companies like Disney and Ford Motor and Marriott and L'Oreal and these huge global brands that need just absolutely cutting edge technology. And now we're seeing that technology coming into higher ed, and we're just excited by that. And so we're going to use those as a way to show you what we mean by the technology and the new digital tools. And then we're going to use Marketing Cloud, which has been around Salesforce as just a leading tool in the world for reaching audiences and communicating with them. And so we're going to use those things to illustrate the points of what these new tools really look like and how they help people solve their issues and improve practice in admissions and recruitment. So along the way, we want to make sure we're capturing those questions and comments. So as you heard at the very beginning of this, please use the Q&A portion of this. If you want to chat us a question, that type of thing, that's great. And we've got some time reserved at the end with a space to do that. So we'll try to make sure we get all the way through the timeline. And then I'll be watching along the way and kind of capturing those questions, and we'll try and catch one or two, 3 or 4 really good ones that come through about this and try and spend a little time answering those for you. Okay, great. So what does that enrollment journey look like? Well, we start at the very beginning, which I call market signaling, and that's our effort as an institution to put ourselves out there in the world and say, hey, we're here. This is what we have to offer. This is what makes us special. This is what makes us, somebody worth looking at as you're starting your search for higher education. Please, take a look and see what we have to offer. And so that's really us going out there and trying to find on all those various channels our potential matches for students. And as we look forward and start to move down that path, well, hopefully, right? We're successful in that. And we're getting a number of people coming into our systems and saying, hey, I'm interested. Or it may be that we're actually purchasing a list. If we have a list or something, that we can start that engagement and try and communicate with folks. And now we're trying to really deepen and personalize that experience and say, we exist as an institution with, dozens of academic programs, but you're interested in this. And so we're going to tell you as much as we can through this engagement with you about why this would be a great fit for you. And I will say, just as in practice, something that's really valuable is also learning when it's not a fit and how to spend that time really focusing on students who are really interested and really able to thrive at your institution. And how do you have information that helps you intelligently work through that huge volume that you're going to have of people who are interested, so you can really hone in on just the right students to bring them along even further into this timeline, which of course then involves their application and getting them into that process. Now we really have to think about how this impacts our staff and how it impacts that back end. And we'll spend a little time thinking about that, but also, we're not approaching this as saying that this is just a one-size-fits-all issue. If you've got international students, graduate students, military students, they're going to have unique needs, and their process is going to look a little different from your traditional high school to college, first time in college student. And so the system has to really help you do that and make your work really effective, but also make it easy for the student and not make it cumbersome for them or tie them up with requirements in an application that really don't apply to them. So, okay, so now we've gotten us to the application stage, and then there's that all-important yield phase. This is when we're trying to get them to say yes to us and make that commitment to enroll at the institution. And that has become trickier and trickier. And when I talk to institutions, this is often a place where we spend a bit of time, because it is something where they're struggling to understand why they may have so many admitted students, but their yield rate may be lower than it was in past years. And so we'll talk about that a little bit as we go through this presentation. So that's our timeline. That's how we're going to track this. And so let's start with that very first area of market signaling and getting our leads in. And when we think about our groups, we've got some important groups here. Those high school to college direct transition students that have been, I'll just call it the bread and butter of higher ed, whatever country you're in, that's a big focus. Secondary or high school students, moving them right into post-secondary or college attendance. And one of the things that is really impacting our issue here is that we have relied in the US specifically on testing names. And we've developed a practice where we have access to those testing names of students as they're sophomores or juniors or seniors in high school. And we've relied upon those to start that conversation and introduce ourselves to those students in a way that signals very directly to them that we are interested in talking with them, and we hope they're interested in talking with us. But what we've seen is we've seen more test optional. We've seen the impact of COVID. We've seen really big reductions in the number of test takers at both ACT and the SAT College Board. And so that should signal to us that we have to start thinking of different ways to reach this audience. We have to engage them in new ways that don't rely upon this. And that's so important for all institutions, but especially for institutions where you're not the biggest fish in the pond. You're not a flagship, or you're not, I'll call it an elite or a household name institution. You might be that small regional public institution, that community college, that small liberal arts institution that offers an excellent education, but you struggle to get your name in front of people the way that larger institutions might. Then we've got our community college transfers, and we often see these students that are sitting, at institutions, at community colleges, but those enrollments have really diminished over the last 5 years. They were trending down since spring of 2011 every year, but COVID just walloped the enrollments. So you've got a lot smaller pool for your traditional transfer students here. And this is a real challenge of not just making sure you're reaching every single one that could be eligible, but realizing that everybody else is trying to do that too. Everybody's after the transfer market that you're after. And so it's really standing out from the crowd, and how do you really compete? Learners, and our adult learners are really elusive, and they always have been, because they are not sitting in a secondary school or a community college. They're out there in the ether, and they are working usually, and they are busy with lives. They often have families, they have community commitments. And so grabbing their attention and even catching them at the time when they might be thinking about taking that next step in their lives and their education is just really challenging, right? It always has been. It's not any easier today than it was in the past. And not for nothing, the job market still is hot, hot, hot. And that means that people have opportunities to advance in work that may not require the same education or credential that they required in the past. And so we really have to be attuned, and especially attuned to this, but there's a huge market out there of these students. There are millions and millions and millions of students, and the National Student Clearinghouse estimates almost 40 million adults with some college and no degree, meaning they started something and could finish it with us. And there are another 30-some million working adults of college-going age for adult learners that have no college experience and could be ready for that first college experience to have it with us. So how do we reach them? They could be interested in upskilling. They may need new skills in this technological environment. We're seeing a lot of people who already have degrees coming back to a community college or a short-term training program to reskill and get those new skills to keep them competitive or make them competitive for that next job. So it's also, short-term, credentials. Maybe I just want to come in and get a certificate because that's what I need to reskill or upskill. And how do we convert those students then into degrees? How do we get more of those students to consider our credit-bearing programs, our degree programs? But oftentimes when we ask them to come in and start, we're asking them to start with a degree, and that's just too much. It's too big a bite for a working adult to think about, but maybe we can ease them into the pool. Maybe we can get them in the shallow end a little bit. And we don't want to ignore graduate studies, because we, of course, need to get those students on to advanced degrees, and that's an important part of this, and often with its own complexity in the application process. And then we have our international students. Borders are more open. It is more possible for people to cross borders and study than it was a few years ago. But how do we ramp back up? How do we rebuild our networks and make sure that we have a really strong supply of students coming, knowing that this competition has gotten fierce globally? And there are many, many, many countries now actively with national strategies and agendas of getting international students into their countries, not just to study, but to live, and as part of an immigration policy in these countries. So they're offering something that oftentimes here in the US, we don't offer. We offer them the chance to study, but it's said that you need to go back home after that degree. And so that's a different offering than we have. And so we have to really be sharp in our messaging about why it's such a benefit to come and study in the US for a first degree or an advanced degree. Okay, so that's a whole bunch of challenges with trying to reach this market. And so, Bill, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you show people how this can be done.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tom. It was fantastic. So let's take a look at the solution. I'll provide an overview of the marketing automation and engagement solution, and then we will see it in action. So we have three main buckets that we like to discuss: unified communication and engagement, marketing intelligence, and segmentation and personalization. Now, you see a lot of features here, and not all institutions use every single one. You have the ability to be as proactive as you'd like in telling the story of your institution to your learners, personalizing that engagement to who they are, what their interests are, and where they are in the enrollment funnel. Now, learners expect personalization. So if a student has already visited campus, let's not send him or her a come visit us email or postcard. And I'm going to illustrate this with a very personal story. Our oldest, who is now 25 years old, so she's graduated, she's on a different academic level than me. She had a 4.3 GPA. She had all A's in school, a 34 on her ACT. As you know, 36 is perfect. She started college with 33 college credits because she got 5s on all of her AP tests. And she was involved in student government and musical theater. This is a student that most schools would like to have to attend their institution. She had an all-day visit at her #1 school, and it was amazing. It solidified it being her #1. But after that visit, she received 3 separate communications from that school to come visit. She wasn't happy because they said she's a name, she's an individual, not a number. This was a larger school. And we talked about it. My oldest and I talked about it and why that mistake could have happened. But this is a high performance achiever. She had high expectations. She completely eliminated that school, instead chose her #2 school, who was close to #1, but that #2 school had consistently sent her personalized communication tailored to her interests inside and outside of the classroom. Personalization matters. So you'll be able to automate these journeys. What if in this journey that you're seeing, you send 2 emails? These emails are calls to action for that learner to apply. But after those 2 emails, they don't apply. Maybe the next step is to send an automated text to the learner and automatically add the student to the call list of their recruiter. So let's also have dynamic content in our communication. You know, at my first institution, we had 30 different types of admit letters based on the student's major. How about having one admit letter where the content is changed based on that segmented data? So that's the overview. Let's take a look at what I just shared, but in action. So meet Sophia. Sophia is a student who is passionate about climate change and she wants to pursue environmental science as a major. Sophia begins exploring the details of the environmental science program. She spends several minutes reading up on this exciting major, but she has to go walk the dog. She starts to navigate away and close out of the browser, and a pop-up recognizes this intent and encourages her to request more information and offers a coupon even for the bookstore. Sophia provides information. Now, Sophia has raised her hand and become a known prospect to Connected University. Now, we can have automatic duplicate management also alert us if Sophia is already in our system, in which we can then just update that student contact record with new information. Or if she's not in the system, create a new record. Sophia can be put on an automated journey. And again, this is where you determine as an institution what you want that journey to look like and how you want it to be automated. You're able to personalize an email to Sophia, which clearly puts a smile on her face like it would for my oldest daughter. And thanks to the branded personalized communication Sophia received, she signed up for an official campus visit where she's excited to be on campus. Now, the day before her campus visit, she receives a reminder text message giving her the option to reschedule if needed. Sophia's got a big project due, so she decides to reschedule her visit. She can do so using a chat bot. The bot helps provide 24/7 self-service for common questions and issues, meeting prospective students where they're at. Now, on her rescheduled campus visit, she's welcome to campus with her schedule and a campus map. Now, after her visit, Sophia receives an email asking her to provide feedback on her experience. In this instance, with interactive email, students can provide ratings or even complete forms without ever leaving their inbox. This increases student engagement and helps Connected University gather more information about their prospects. So Sophia has had a great campus visit. All communication from Connected University has been personalized compared to other schools, and she's truly excited to fill out the application for admissions. And now I'd like to turn it back over to my good friend Tom to discuss the next part of that enrollment funnel.
Yeah, and I was just struck in listening and watching their build. How much of that, what you described today, for so many people is manual.
Yeah.
And they have to, look at the information and decide, they look at responses and they decide, well, maybe I'll start a text with this person, or maybe I'll do, and all of the automation there and the chat bot just makes it so much more effective in communicating. And there's so much intelligence around that allows us to then see what's working, what's not working. It's just really, really incredible to see how that's advanced.
Yeah, it really is, Tom. And, all of the institutions are able to capture all of the communications and the engagement that we saw, and everything was automated on that student record. And so that you have complete visibility into what the email was sent out, what was the texting conversation like? Did Sophia just talk with a bot and she never spoke with an individual? Well, that full chat that conversation is captured on that student record. So you have that complete visibility into that engagement.
That's amazing. Yeah. So let's say, all that works and we're lucky enough to get the student to apply to our institution. So I was thinking back about what applications looked like, in the not too distant past. When we said we were making them digital, oftentimes it meant having a PDF copy on the website, and a person could download that and print it and fill it out and send it back. And then we got things like fillable PDF, so it was a little better with it. And then we really saw the rise and introduction of applications that were really online forms being completed by the student. And that really was a different level of effectiveness and efficiency. And that was a big moment. But I will tell you, it's so competitive now. Everybody seems to have an online application that is really a form being completed online, not a PDF or something like that. Gone are the days where you can have an application that has all the questions you would ever need to ask of anybody who might apply, and all the sections that may or may not apply to that person who's applying at that institution. People just won't put up with that anymore because they're so used to having forms online in other parts of their lives where it logically branches. If you tell me I'm an undergraduate student and I've never been to college before, I'm going to get just the information that I need to complete to get this application done. And if you tell me I'm a transfer or international or graduate, I'm just going to get those questions to complete. And that is just so important, because people will turn away in the middle of an application if it's too complex, if it's more information than they were prepared to share at that moment. And that can really inhibit the completion rate on your application. So the bar is, it's got to be really a really easy application, and it's got to be personal. And so wherever possible, right, we want to use what we already know about that person to complete the application, not have them re-enter their information if they've already put it in. Did they need to correct it? Did they need to update it? Great. but don't make them retype information back into an application. If you already know who they are, that's just the kind of the baseline of CRM practice. Then we get into what I call the decidedly uninteresting parts of the application, which are once the student's applied, we need more information. We have to get official documents, test scores perhaps. There may be other requirements that we have to gather depending upon what program they're going into or what level they're applying to. And so we've got to make sure that we can concisely and accurately communicate with that student exactly what we need. No generic communication like, here's a list of all the things you might need to turn in, figure out for yourself what it is you might need to submit. We really have to personalize that down to what we require from them. And then it's so important that the processing needs to be easy as it can be, right? There's rigor in the application review process. And this doesn't say that there's not, it's just that it has to really work. And so many people today are working remotely, and we want our staff to be able to work from wherever they are. Maybe they have to be out at a week of college fairs, but there, are 5 or 6 applications that really need a personal eye on them. Or maybe we're talking about graduate programs where the program itself is going to do the admitting, and we have to have a really efficient way of being able to route and branch those application materials out to those programs so that they can really quickly and effectively look at those and decide which students they're going to admit. And we know that, especially for institutions that are not the household names, the big flagships, speed of application processing and speed to yes oftentimes means that you're the institution to which they will compare everyone else in the process. But if you come in 3rd, 4th, or 5th in that line, and they've already been admitted to other institutions, your job is going to be just that much harder to try and turn their attention to you. So it sounds really uninteresting and boring to talk about application processing, but it's absolutely critical to making the class and hitting your numbers. So Bill, let me turn it back over to you to talk about how we do that.
Yeah, no, thanks, Tom. And it's exciting to me. I've led operations for over a decade, so that's an exciting area that I love to discuss. So no, thank you, Tom. Let's take a look at the delivered out-of-the-box applicant portal for Salesforce now that Sophia has applied. So when Sophia logs in to this applicant portal, she immediately sees her applications, and then even on the right side, a list of appointments. Now, think of this as a one-stop shop for Sophia. So this doesn't just have to be applications for admissions. Here you're seeing it is, but it could be applications for the honors program, scholarship applications, study abroad applications, whatever applications you'd like for the student to be able to apply to and then view that status can be displayed here in the portal. Now, if you're like me, this picture is difficult to see. Therefore, let me expand this a little bit better so that you can get a much better view. And here is that better view of her portal. Now, remember, this is just the out-of-the-box delivered applicant portal. I have done nothing with this portal. You can brand it with your own logo, your own colors, and really personalize this portal for your institution. Now, Tom discussed an application for admission, and we deliver a template that you can certainly change and use both for undergrad, grad, any student population, where it has branching logic based on student responses. We talked a little bit about international student. So what if Sophia selects that she is an international student? Then a section in this application would then not be hidden, it would populate for her so that she can fill that out as an international student. You also have the ability to collect short answers and other commonly known features that everyone expects, both students and institutions, such as having the student have the ability to upload specific documentation. Now, I mentioned appointments, and at Salesforce, we deliver that functionality where Sophia could book an appointment. And this is just an example. So institutions control who she can book an appointment with. And in this example, she could meet with her admissions counselor. We're offering her to meet with an academic advisor and even a staff member from financial aid. Now, let's switch hats and look at Salesforce from the staff perspective. Meet Rachel. Rachel is our director of admissions. Now, Rachel starts her morning reviewing her dashboard, which provides her with actionable data insights. She tracks both prospect and applicant behavior, and she monitors enrollment activity in real time. Now, Rachel reviews the data that she needs to see as the admissions director at a high level, with a clear view into applications by status, in this case, reviews, and even decision outcomes. Rachel, as well as every admissions staff member, can also have their own dashboard specific to who they are, such as maybe they're managing a territory. Maybe they want to see how many students just applied within the last week, how many students we admitted yesterday. Really, any data within Salesforce is reportable, and you can have the ability to drill down as far as you'd like into that data. Again, if you have eyesight like me, let me expand that kind of initial dashboard that you saw with the views into applications, reviews, and decisions. And this dashboard is delivered. This is an out-of-the-box delivered dashboard that we allow institutions to certainly use and then change as you need. Now, Rachel also manages a territory, and here she has a simplified view into her applications for her territory, with the ability in this case to drill down into the actual application on the far left or into that student account record. Now, Rachel may not know Sophia, so here we are surfacing a lot of information for Rachel to understand who Sophia is, what her engagement has been with our institution, and so much more. Really, what I spoke about earlier, a true 360-degree view of Sophia. So on the bottom left, you can see a delivered applicant timeline. And this can be when she first applied, when she was admitted, when she submitted her deposit. In the middle, you see her application. I'm showing one. Maybe she has multiple applications that you want your staff to be able to see. And then even on the right, we have an action launcher. Maybe I want to send Sophia a quick email or log a call, or I want to call her tomorrow, so I create a new task. I can have a quick action launcher as a staff. Now we'll come back, look at the bottom right. We'll come back and talk a little bit about recommendations, but you see recommendation on the bottom right, and you also see scheduler. We saw from Sophia's perspective that she can schedule an appointment with an admissions counselor, a financial aid advisor, as well as her academic advisor. Well, with Salesforce, we also have the ability for staff to be able to schedule appointments on behalf of that student. Now, in this case, Rachel drills into Sophia's application, where she can see Sophia's responses from the application. She can see all the associated application materials. And you'll also notice on the right, we have a full review process that, yes, can be automated, where Rachel can then make her recommendation to admit Sophia to Connected University. And at that point, I'd like to turn it back over to Tom to discuss the next phase.
Great. Thanks, Bill. And there's so much in that. We could have spent the whole hour on that. There's so much that it does, and the ability to route for review and set up those automations and all that is really amazing. And it's so robust, and it's just really just a very comprehensive suite of functions that it has in there. But I want to spend some time and save some time here, because this is just one of those big issues that people are really facing today and struggling with in many cases, is how do we get our yield up? And one of the reasons yield has been changing recently are these big initiatives that have, for very good reasons, driven up the number of applications coming into institutions. The Common App is one consortium of institutions where it's made it so easy for the student to be able to apply and select multiple institutions and get that application in the hands of the institution. And they're oftentimes admitted from that experience. But we also have statewide initiatives where the state has made it easy for students to apply to any institution across the state system. And that's a wonderful benefit to allow students more access to institutions, but it also means institutions are dealing with more admitted students and trying to figure out how to get more of those students, the right students, to come across the line and say yes to them and commit and enroll at those institutions. After all, they can only go to one school, no matter how many schools they're admitted to. And how do we know where to apply our efforts? How do we really understand which students might be more likely to enroll, and what kind of information can help us in that work, so that we're not just kind of shooting into the dark, but we're really doing this with some modern tools and some real intelligence that will help us on that. And I don't just limit that to talking about our admissions counselors, because oftentimes we're trying to engage our academic units, our student affairs units in the yield process, and we don't want to burden them with a bunch of names of students where we have no idea if they're really interested or not. We really want them to call the students where it would make a huge difference to them if a faculty member called, or a student who's really going to get excited by hearing from our student life area. Those are the ways in which we want to use the data and intelligence to help us effectively leverage the resources we have at our institutions. So before we go into kind of Bill's demoing this, I want to spend a minute talking about predictive scoring, because this is a popular outsourcing effort where it's not new that you can outsource and have people predictably score your data so that you can understand who's most likely to enroll. But this is how it works. So if we look at a normal distribution curve here, and that curve might be slightly different at your institution, but it's going to look somewhat like this. It's going to look pretty similar to this. What we know is that those students who are very likely to enroll get the high score, right? And those are the students that fall into the very highest part of that curve. They have all the data characteristics that show that they are more likely to enroll than other students. And conversely, when we look at the next group, these are the students who are out there in what we call the tails of that curve. And they're the students who are going to score very low because they're very unlikely to enroll. Now, when you think about it at first, it's like, wow, well, this is really helpful, because now I know that I need to really pay attention to those students who are likely to enroll and make sure they have everything they need to get across the finish line. And maybe I don't want to spend my resources on those students out in the tails because they're not very likely to enroll at my institution, until we realize a couple of really important things. That the students who are in that high part of the curve with the high scores, that's everybody you've already gotten in the past. That is your history of students who have already come to the institution, and that's why they score so high. Whereas the students who scored very low are all of those students that you're trying to reach. And those are the students who are your future, right? They represent the changes going on in demographics and geography and preferences. And these are the students that oftentimes represent some of your most strategic goals. And those could be students who might be trying to get in your honors program. They might be more ethnically diverse than students you've had in the past. They might be more geographically diverse than students that you have in the past. And Bill, if you can click just one, yeah, there you go. And there are a lot of strategic targets you're trying to reach, and you know that you're historically, the students in your backyard, the students you've always gotten, are important to you, and that's good to know. But it's really good to know who is in that tail that might be a student that you really need to enroll to ensure you've got a strong future in enrollment. So there's some key questions let's think about. So what is it that would make a difference in raising the likelihood to enroll score? Not just that they scored low and I want to recruit them, but what would change that outcome? And if I'm really interested in pursuing that audience, what can I do? What can my staff do that would really make a difference? What data is needed to inform and better score these models? Because predictive scoring, artificial intelligence is only as good as the data you're feeding it. And so if you feed it limited data, if you feed it data that's static from the past instead of real-time data about your students, it's going to give you limited answers. If you don't feed it financial aid information, if you don't feed it other information, it's going to give you a limited response about that student's likelihood to enroll, and also what steps might be necessary to increase the likelihood that that student can enroll. And so I think a lot of folks are asking the question right now, especially as AI has become such a buzzword for us in our work. So if I've been outsourcing this in the past, can I bring this in-house? Are there tools that would let me actually have this kind of predictive power and intelligence right at my fingertips and at my staff's fingertips? So Bill, I'll let you take it.
Yeah, thanks so much, Tom. So let's dive a little bit deeper into the dashboards and predictive analytics that Tom was just discussing. So you saw this dashboard earlier in our story with Rachel, the director of admissions. When I discuss reporting with institutions, I ask them two questions. What data do you want to see and how do you want to visualize it? You're able to drill into the data that you'd like, where you can easily identify trends and then adjust your strategy. Now, one AI component that we have at Salesforce are recommendations. We saw this on Sophia's contact record. That recommendations view data, they view engagement of the student, and they make appropriate recommendations for action. So this is AI in action. In this example, here the student hasn't filed the FAFSA yet and is recommending that she be put into a FinAid campaign. Also, the student is highly engaged. So AI is recommending a personal phone call from that admissions counselor. Now, here is just one example. And yes, I did expand this for anyone with eyesight like mine. Think about it. If we could have AI assist with predictions, and ask yourself this, what would we want to predict? So this prediction is a propensity to enroll, your basic propensity to enroll, and gives a score between 1 and 100. Now, this example just shows you the top predictor of why this score is 60. In this case, I'm only listing one top predictor. You can certainly display a lot more. But now that we have a prediction, this can also automate a campaign for the student or even another task. So maybe I'm a recruiter with thousands of students in my territory, and I need to prioritize a list of those who I make a personal phone call to. Again, this is just one example. There are many others. But with that, I'd like it to turn back to my good friend Tom with any summary thoughts, and then we'll get into question and discussion.
Great. Oh, thanks, Bill. So yeah, we've already gotten one question that I'm going to give to you here in just a minute. But I think as we look at AI and prediction and how that works, I think one of the big challenges is integration of data and really making sure that you're not just using, applicant and inquiry data. I mean, if you do, okay, but it can be a lot richer. So, make sure that, your events data, if it's not in your CRM, that's incorporated in there, because that's going to tell you a lot about the student's level of engagement. But financial aid data, and then what financial aid data do you want to put in? Do you want to put in any detail? Well, you may or may not be comfortable with that as an institution. Maybe you just want proxies like FAFSA in, no, yes, that type of thing. Or one that I really think is very, very helpful is if you have already packaged the student, calculate the need gap between their direct cost at the institution and the amount of gift aid that you're offering them in that package. And that dollar amount, that gift aid gap amount, isn't personal information. It's not based, you're not revealing income, you're not revealing EFC, you're not revealing anything else that's personal about their application. But that gift aid gap as an amount can be powerful data that can fuel the AI engine to help you understand some of the things that may or may not be indicating propensity to enroll for your students. And I made the point about real-time data that if you introduce a new variable along the way, so, things change. We're always trying to, find a new rabbit to pull out of our hat in admissions. And in the middle of your recruiting cycle, you put a new data field into the system. And it's really easy to add those in Salesforce. It's really simple to do that. Well, the AI can actually start to ingest that new data in real time and start to use that new data in its predictive analysis. It's just really impressive how fast this has come from what was more of a static predictive kind of mathematical exercise or statistical exercise to this real-time neural networking type of tool that is just so powerful. And I love the way it specifically offers recommendations that your staff could use to then say, okay, if I'm going to talk to Bill, I'm going to talk to him about this. And this is going to really help me yield Bill to the institution. It's a suggestion. It helps guide their work. And especially with the young staff, young admissions counselors, that can be really powerful. Okay, let me, Bill, tell you, we've got a really good first question. I really like this one. So it's from Robert, and Robert asks, if Sophia applied to both the College of Arts and Sciences and the business school, can institution user permissions be set up such that admissions could see all aspects, but individuals of each school would only have visibility into their school-specific pieces? Great question.
Yeah, I love the question. Thank you so much, Robert, for asking. And the answer is yes, absolutely. That's your short answer. I'll give you a long answer. You can imagine, I spent 14 years in admissions, so I can talk all day. So absolutely, we have profiles, permissions that are all role-based, and we can drill down even to have field level security within Salesforce. Tom just mentioned EFC. I worked very closely with financial aid, and there are certain things that I, as an admissions staff member, don't need to see that they do. Maybe I need to see that, yes, the students in my territory submitted their FAFSA or didn't submit their FAFSA. I don't need to see their EFC. So that can be blocked from them. Maybe you want to check box that they've been selected for verification. You don't want me to see the details of that, but the fact that they've been selected, so that we can get very specific and prescriptive in our profiles and permissions within Salesforce, and who can see what, as well as even who can update things. We don't want certainly everyone in admissions updating certain decision fields. We can even limit that field. Great question, Robert. Yeah.
Great. Yeah. Okay. Great. Oh, thanks you, Robert, for your thank you. You're most welcome. Yeah. So if anybody else has another question, please feel free to put it in there. But for right now, I just want to, I want to say one thing before we, if we have another question, great, but I've got another slide on resources here coming up. So one of the things that we know is really important is that, we're the start of this in recruitment and admissions. We have such an important role to play and in getting students in the institutional door, right, and getting them started. And hopefully we've identified just the right students who are really fit for the programs we have, that they really are going to thrive in those programs. But we also know that student success is absolutely linked to our work in recruitment. And the more students we retain, the easier it is to recruit, the fewer we have to replace if they leave. And also higher retention rates at schools mean typically more demand for our programs, because the word gets out that they're really successful and supported programs. And all the data that you're generating in that recruitment and admission process can be used, and whatever parts of it can be used, and just kind of populate that student success platform without moving technologies, right? We're just staying on the same technology. You can move through the student life cycle and bring in all that rich data on engagement that the student had through the inquiry process, application process, yield process, and just bring them in through that. And we didn't get a chance today, we just didn't really have time, but we have these really cool things called care plans that we use. And you can use them for onboarding students, you can use them for students who may be struggling academically, and they're just embedded in this platform. And it's a really cool tool to help guide students through a process or guide them to help and resources that they may need. Okay, great. So let me offer out that we've got a few more resources that we want to make sure you're aware of. These are all free that you can use, and we hope they're really helpful to you. So the first is, we do a global report called the Connected Student Report. And that report talks about and asks questions of students around the world in a number of developed education countries, and asks them questions about, how's college for you? And what's meaningful to you in college? And it focuses a bit on their relationship with technology in college. And this third edition report is really insightful, because what it's showing us is that a student's impression of technology is very highly related to their impression of a college experience overall. And you just see it in the data that students who think their college is doing a pretty good job with technology are having a pretty good experience, and vice versa. If it's not easy to use technology, if they don't think they have good technology at the institution, students tend to report a fairly negative experience. And other really great insights in that report. So please go and grab a copy of that from the site we're giving you there. If you'd like to see more about Education Cloud, as I mentioned, that Bill got to show you some of the highlights of it. There is a ton more in there to explore. And we have also done a new thing that we hadn't done in the past. You can download a sample organization, meaning a sample data set and sample trial of the software, and you can test drive it. So if you want to get in there and kind of see what it can do, and you can get in and it'll have some sample data in there. So you can get in there and try it out, see what it's like, and poke around a little bit with that. We encourage you to do that. And you can just go to educationcloud.com. We've gotten that domain site, and you can download it. And then finally, we put our email addresses in there, because if there are any questions you may have, or if there's any way that we can help you in what you're trying to do, please feel free to reach out to us, because we are very committed to success for you and your institutions and your students. Bill, did you want to say anything?
No, I wanted to thank you, Tom. It was a joy always seeing you. Maybe we'll see each other in person shortly. And thank you to everyone in the audience. We really appreciate your time.
Yeah, echo that. Thank you, everybody. And thanks to Acro for hosting this webinar. We really appreciate it. And we really appreciate your time with us today. Thanks so much.